our red panel, which we do. And let's create one more panel, maybe a larger one that's green that will take up this section of our frame. So let's call this green panel. So let's change blue to green. So green, 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 and here as well. So we'll place this where X is 0, Y is 250, and let's make this 500 by 250. And then we need to add this to the frame. So frame dot add green panel. And then this should give us a nice square that's made up of separate J panels. Cool. Yeah, so those are J panels. Let's add a component. So let's make a label. So let's do this at the top. J label, label equals new J label. And I'll set some text as well. So label.set text. Hi. And you can add an icon too if you want. I'll do that just for this demonstration. We'll need to create an image icon. So image icon, icon equals new image icon. And this file that I have is thumbsup.png, and it looks like this. So this is thumbsup.png. And include this import, but I misspelled image. All right, then label.set icon. All right, now with this label, we can add this to either the frame or we can add this to a panel. So let's add this to one of the panels. Let's say the red panel. So let's add that here. So instead of saying frame.add label, we're going to say the panel that we want to add this to, because these panels function like containers. So let's add this to the red panel. So red panel.add label. And this should appear in our red panel, which it does. Let's instead add this to a different panel, like the blue panel. And now this label is contained within the blue panel. And let's try it for the green panel. And now this label appears in the green panel. And you can also move this label around within the container too. However, these panels, they use something called a flow layout manager. And in the last video on labels, the frames that we use have a border layout. All you really need to know about flow layouts right now is that with components that you add to a container that's using a flow layout manager, it will take all these components, stick them to the top, and center them, and it will add components until this first row is filled. Once that row is filled, it's going to add components to the second row. But for now, we don't really know how that works. That's a video for a different day. Let's just set the layout for our panel to a border layout just because we're comfortable with that. And then later I'll demonstrate using no layout manager and how we can place this label. So let's set the layout for our green panel, and we're kind of comfortable with border layouts now and moving labels within a frame that's using a border layout. So green panel dot set layout, and then we can pass in a new border layout. So this is the same layout that our J-frame uses. And if we're using the border layout, it's going to place any components to the center vertically and to the left horizontally. And then we can use set vertical and set horizontal alignment for this label to move this label around within the container. And then later we'll set no layout manager so we can place coordinates if you prefer to do it that way. So let's set the vertical and horizontal alignment for this label. So we'll do that at the top, label.set vertical alignment, and this takes a constant, J label, and let's move this to the top. So then our label will move as far as it can to the top vertically, and it gets stuck at the top of this container because, well, it's a container. It doesn't like to allow components outside of the container. And if we were to set this to bottom, take a wild guess, it's going to move to the bottom of the container. And then let's also set the horizontal alignment because we can. So label.set horizontal alignment, and we can pick left, center, or right. Let's pick the right this time. So j label dot right, and our label will stick to the bottom and to the right of the container that it's in. Now, what if we switch this label to a different panel, like the red panel? First, we'll just want to change the layout that we're using. So let's change the red panel layout to a new border layout. And then we're going to add our label to the red panel this time. So let's take a guess as to where this label is going to move to. It's going to move to the bottom right corner of the red panel. And if we switch this to blue, and I'm just going to copy this because we'll want to set this to a border layout. So blue panel and blue panel.add label. Now this is within the bottom right of the blue panel. So what if you don't want to use a layout manager? Well, this is what we can do. We're going to set null for the layout for each of these panels. So let's change this to null for all three panels. And let's take a look to see what changes were made. All right, so we need to set the bounds for this label now. So let's do that here. Label.set bounds. We're going to place X coordinate, a Y coordinate, a width, and a height. So let's say we want this in the top left corner. That is where X is 0 and Y is 0. Let's say for the width, this will be 75, and for the height, 75 as well. Now, we added our label to the blue panel. So it's going to be in the top left corner of the blue panel, and not necessarily the top left corner of our frame, because with set bounds, it's going to place your component at these coordinates relative to the container that it's in. Since this label is within the blue panel is acting as the container and not necessarily the frame. So if we were to move this label to a different panel, it's going to be within a new container. So let's say we want to add this label to the green panel. So now this label is going to be in the top left of our green panel, and you can do the same thing with red too. And then if we were to move the X position and Y position of this label, let's say 100 and 100. And now this label is moved down on the Y-axis by 100 pixels and on the X-axis to the right by 100 pixels relative to the corner of the container that it's within, this green panel, and not necessarily the frame itself. So we don't really need this set vertical alignment and set horizontal alignment if you're using no layout manager. This is something you'll want to use if you're using a border layout. All right, everybody, so that's the basics of panels. It's basically a GUI component that functions as a container to hold other components. So you can add components to a panel, and then you can add the panel to a frame. So that's the basics of panels. If you would like a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of panels in Java. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how we can create a simple button in Java. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Alright, my fellow human beings, let's discuss JButtons. A JButton is a Java GUI button that performs an action when you click on it. We're going to be creating a frame and then adding a button to that frame. However, with this frame, it's going to implement something called the Action Listener interface. So I think it would be best to demonstrate this with a different class instead of using our main class with the main method. So let's create a different class. So file, new, class. I will call this myFrame, and we'll have myFrame extends JFrame. So myFrame extends JFrame. MyFrame will be the subclass of JFrame, so it will inherit everything from the JFrame class and behave exactly like a JFrame. So let's create an instance of myFrame. So myFrame, let's call this frame equals new myFrame. And actually, we don't really need to give this a name because I don't think we're going to be doing anything else within this class. You can even just shorten that line to just new myFrame and that'll work just fine. We're going to spend a majority of the time within this myFrame class. So to begin, we'll need a constructor for this class. So myFrame, and to create a frame, we say this, well, to set up the frame, I should say, we'll need these few lines of code. Instead of saying like frame.set default close operation, it's just this. So this dot set default close operation, JFrame exit on close. We're going to be using no layout manager, so this dot set layout to null, this dot set size, 500 by 500 is decent, and this dot set visible to true. So this should display a JFrame now. All right, so let's create a button at this point. So it's very similar to creating any other component. So that's J button. Let's call this button equals new J button. And then we will need an import too. And then let's set the bounds for this button. So button dot set bounds. So we have X, Y, width, and height. I will place this maybe where X is 200, where Y is 100. For the width, let's make this 100, and the height, maybe 50. So then, to actually display the button, we need to add this to our frame. So this dot add, what are we adding? We're adding our button. And let's run this. So here's our button. It currently doesn't do anything. So we need our class to implement the action listener interface. So implements action listener. So we're going to need to implement a method, the action performed method. So this frame will now listen for events. So one thing we can do, we can check to see if the event that occurs is our button. So we do that with if e.getSource is equal to our button. Then what are we going to do? All right, you can see one problem here though. This button is not global. It's only local within the constructor of myFrame. So we can actually turn this into a global component. So what we need to do is actually declare this outside of the constructor, because right now, since we declared this within the constructor, only anything within the constructor has access to this. So we'll say JButton button, and we'll finish instantiating this button within the constructor. And you can see that this error went away. So now what do we want to do when we click on this button? Let's just do a system.out.println, and I will print out the word poo. All right, so then when we click on this button, it performs an action. So if the action performed is equal to the button, it's going to do this. The button is going to poo. However, this button doesn't seem to be doing anything. That's because we need to add an action listener directly to the button. So button.add action listener, and we can pass in this, since this class is implementing the action listener interface. So now this should do something. And now when we click on the button starts printing the word poo. Now is the perfect opportunity for me to introduce something called a Lambda expression. It's actually a shortcut that you can use in place of action listeners. So this is an advanced shortcut. I do have an entire video dedicated to this that you might want to watch at some point. So what we can do, instead of implementing the action listener interface, and instead of using the action performed method, when we add an action listener to this button, we can place a Lambda expression here. And this is how to write one. We write E within the parentheses, followed by an arrow, and then what we want this button or other component to do. So let's just system.out.println the word poo again because we can. So poo. And when we run this, it does the exact same thing, just with less syntax. However, this is a more advanced concept. I do have an entire video dedicated to Lambda expressions if you're interested. Let's customize this button. Well, because we can. Because we can is actually a great reason for many things. So let's set the text for this button. So button.set text. And then I will write, I'm a button. There's our text. So if you look at the text for the button, there's this annoying border around the text. We can actually get rid of that. We need to set focusable false because the button is focusable. So button.set focusable. And we're going to set this to false. So that should get rid of that box that's around the text of the button. Let's also increase the size of this button too. So I think I will make this 250 by 100. That should be decent. And let's move this over a little bit. I'll try and at least get this close to centering this. All right, let's add an icon too. So we'll need to create an icon. So this is an image icon. I'll call this icon equals new image icon. We're going to list the source for this. So I have a picture on my desktop I want to use. It's just a pointer finger basically. So this is point.png. And then we'll need to import as well. All right, so button.set icon. And we're setting this to the name of our icon, which is coincidentally icon. Now I want the icon on the right-hand side of the text. So there's a method for that. So what we're gonna do is button.set horizontal text position. So J button dot, let's say center. I'm also going to change the vertical text position. So button dot set vertical text position, and this will be J button dot, let's say bottom. So the pointer finger should be in the center and above our text. Let's also change the font too. So button dot set font, and we can pass in a new font. New font. I will pick maybe Comic Sans. Then you can style this. You can make this bold, plain, italic, whatever. I'll make this bold. And then a size. All right, let's take a look. All right, not too bad. I'm gonna pull the text in a little bit closer, and there's a method to do that. So button dot set icon text gap. And I'm going to set this to a negative number to pull the text in closer. Negative 15 should do it. Not too bad, not too bad. Let's also change the font color. So button dot set foreground, and I will pick maybe cyan. All right. Let's change the background color now of the button. So button dot set background, and I will just pick maybe like light gray or something. Light gray. Okay, let's add a border. So button dot set border, and we can actually pass in a new border too. So border factory dot create, and then pick a border that you want. I will pick etched border. And let's take a look. So there we go, it kind of has like a 3D effect. Oh, you can also disable a button too. There's a method for that, so button dot set enabled and set this to false. This will disable a button. And actually, if you want a button to be only clickable once and then it's disabled, you can put this within the action performed method. So if we were to do this, we could only click this button once and then it's disabled. So that's something that's an option to you. A feature that's available to you with buttons is that you can change components within a frame on a button click. Let's say that we want to display a label on our frame after we click a button. So let's create a label and we'll add this label to our frame. So we should declare this label outside of the constructor so that the action performed method has access to it. So J label, we'll call this label, and we'll finish instantiating this within the constructor. So now label equals new J label. And I'll create an image icon. So I plan on using this image and I'm just going to add this to our label to demonstrate this. So let's create a new image icon, image icon. I'll call this icon 2 because just the word icon is already taken, equals new image icon. And this file name is face.png. Now we can set the icon for this label, so label.set icon, and the icon that I want to use is icon2. Let's also set the bounds for this label, so label.set bounds. So I will place this where x is 150, where y is 250. The width will be 150, and the same thing with the height. So we can also set the visibility for this label. So label.set visible, and I'm going to set this to false because I do not want this to appear, at least right away. And then lastly, we need to add this label to the frame. So don't forget about doing that. So this dot add label. And then with the action performed method, after we click this button, let's set the visibility of the label to true. So label.set visible true. So then when we run this and we click the button, our label is now visible. Well, that's how to create a simple button in Java. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of buttons. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how border layout managers work in Java. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Let's discuss border layouts. A border layout is used within a container to place components in one of 5 major areas. They are north, south, west, east, and center. So here's some code that I've written for an example. You don't need to copy this. We'll get to this later. I have created 5 separate panels and I gave them all a unique color. I have attached one of these panels to one of the borders. So panel 1 is attached to the north, then panel 2 to the west, east, south, and then center. Let's see what this looks like. So lo and behold, this is a border layout. The center panel will expand in size proportionately to the size of the frame. The top and bottom borders, they will expand horizontally, but not vertically when you resize this frame. And with the west and the east borders, they will expand vertically, but not horizontally when you expand this frame. Here's some uses of a border layout. You can use the north border for some sort of title. You can use the west or the east border for some sort of sidebar or navigation bar. You can use the south border for some sort of footer for your program. And the center border, you can use this for the, I would say, main part or main body of your program. So let's recreate what we witnessed step by step. So first we'll need a JFrame. So JFrame frame equals new JFrame. Frame dot set default close operation. JFrame frame dot exit on close. Let's set a size. So frame dot set size. I'll make this 500 by 500. And frame dot set visible and set this to true. Let's create some panels. So JPanel, we'll call this panel 1 equals new JPanel. And we'll create the other panels as well. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's give them all a color. So let's begin with panel 1. Panel 1 dot set background. And this was red, so color dot red. Let's do the same for the others. So we have panel 2, 3, 4, 5. The second panel, this was green, but you can pick whatever colors you want. Doesn't matter. 3 was yellow, 4 was magenta, and 5 was blue. And before we add these panels to our frame, we need to set up the frame with a border layout. So this is normally the default layout manager, but you'll need to do this for other layout managers though. So to change the layout manager, you type in the name of the container, in this case it's our frame, dot set layout, and then you pass in a new layout manager. So if we want to set up a container with a border layout, we type in new border layout. So for our frame, this isn't going to do anything, but if you're doing this with a panel or other container, you would need to set this up with a new border layout. And lastly, we just need to add these panels to our frame. So frame.add, what are we adding? We're adding a component, our panel. So let's add panel 1. And then to set a component to one of the borders, when you add this component, you add a comma, and then type in border layout dot and then the direction. So we can set this to north if we want this attached to the top. So now at the top of this program, we have a red bar, our red panel. This will expand horizontally, but not vertically. And we can actually change the dimensions on this. So this is panel 1. Changing the width won't do anything, but we can change the height though for this. So if we set this to 50, you can see it has half the height now, but the width still expands to accommodate the size of the frame. Let's add the other panels. So it's the same process as before. Frame.add, let's add panel 2, and panel 2 we'll put on the west. So border layout.west. And then we have this green sidebar that you saw previously. So this will expand vertically, but not horizontally. And we can even change the dimensions for this. So this time I'm going to change the width to 50 and the height will stay the same because it doesn't really matter. So now the width of this panel is cut in half because we changed this from 100 to 50. And let's finish by adding the others. So panel 3, this will be on the east. So border layout.east. Here's our east panel, and then we have south. So this will be panel 4, border layout.south. And then of course center. So panel 5, border layout.center. Just like this. So one option available to you is that you can add margins between these components. This is how we can do that. So when we set a container, our frame, with a new border layout, when we pass in a new border layout, we can actually send in some margins for the width and margins for the height. So let's say that we want 10 pixels of margin for the width and 0 for the height. This is what this might look like. So with the west and the east panels, they have 10 pixels worth of margin. Now let's do that with the height this time. So now we'll have 10 pixels of margin for the width and the height between all these panels. So now all of these components are now separated by 10 pixels worth of margin. So if you need to add margin between components, you can just pass them in when you create a new border layout. Here's an advanced trick that you can do. With these panels, they can also act as a container with their own layout manager, and they use something called a flow layout manager by default. So let's say that we want to add some panels within our center panel, kind of like subpanels. This is how we can do that. So I'm just going to copy everything we have just to save time, beginning when we create these instances of our panels to when we set the size for the panels. So I'm just going to add a comment that these are sub panels. So it's the same process as before really, but let's call these panels 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And we're going to change the colors for these as well, so make sure to change the name. Okay, so with panel 6, let's say that this is black. Panel 7 will be dark gray. Panel 8 will just be gray. Panel 9 will be light gray. And panel 10 will just be white. So we need to set panel 5 with a new border layout, because with our frame, we added a new border layout to this, but now panel 5 is also acting as our container, so we can set this with its own unique layout manager. So with panel 5, set this to a new border layout. Then we need to set a preferred size for each of these panels. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And let's say that these are all going to be 50 by 50. I'm just going to copy this a bunch of times to save time. 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, now we can add these subpanels to panel 5, which is the center panel. So it's the same process that we did with our frame. So instead of saying frame, panel 5 is going to act as the container. So panel 5 dot add, let's add panel 6. So panel 6, comma, then if we want to add this to the north border, we type in border layout dot north. And this is what this currently looks like. So we have a panel within another panel, and let's add the others. So panel 5 dot add panel 7. But make sure you change this to a different border. So let's change that to the south. There we go. So panel 5 dot add panel 8. Let's add this to the west. Here it is. Panel 5 dot add panel 9. This will go on the east. And then lastly, we have the center panel. So that's panel 5 dot add panel 10. Border layout dot center. And there it is. I don't really see the point of this, but I just wanted to let you know that you can do stuff like this. So that's the basics of using border layouts in Java. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's how border layouts work in Java. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how the Flow Layout Manager works in Java. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Well, the flow layout, it places components in a row sized at their preferred size. If the horizontal space in the container is too small, then the flow layout class uses the next available row. So we'll need a frame. I'm just going to paste what I had previously. So jframe frame equals new jframe. Frame.set default close operation, jframe exit on close, set your preferred size, and then frame.set visible true. To set up a frame or other container class with a flow layout, we use a certain function called setLayout, and then we pass in a new layout manager. So new flow layout. So by default, frames use a border layout. So this time we're setting this with a flow layout. Now we'll need to add some components to this frame to demonstrate the effects of a flow layout. So let's create some buttons. So J button, we'll call this button 1 equals new J button. All right, so I'm going to show you guys a shortcut too for creating components. So let's say that we're adding this button to the frame. So frame.add, then we say button 1, right? One shortcut that we can do just to save time is that instead of calling this by name, we can just say new J button and pass this in to the frame when we add this. And then we can give this like a number if we wanted to. So this will create a new J button for us. All right, so one problem that you might run into is that sometimes these components don't always display if you set the visibility to true before you actually add the components. So actually, if we were to move this window, this button appears. So I'm just going to set the visibility at the very end so we don't run into any problems. So then this should display right away. There it is. All right, let's create a bunch of buttons to demonstrate this. So I'm going to copy this line of code where we create a new J button and add this to the frame, maybe like 9 times or so. So we'll call this button 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so we should have 9 buttons now, and they're all centered within the top row. So with flow layouts, if they run out of room within their first row, the components will be pushed down to the next row, kind of like this. Pretty sweet, right? So it's kind of like a waterfall or something. It's flowing like water. So we can also set an alignment for these components. So when you pass in a new flow layout, you can type in flow layout dot, and if you want this to start on the left, you can say leading, and there's a few options here. So now what these components do is that they stick to the left-hand side, they're leading, and if you were to expand this frame, they will stay in the top left corner. And then when you compress this frame, they will be pushed down. So the default is actually center. So we should see no change with what we had previously, where they will all stay in the center. And there's also trailing as well, so let's switch this to trailing. And now they will stick to the right-hand side, and if you were to compress this frame, they will be pushed down. You can also set the horizontal and vertical gaps between the components too. So I'm going to change this back to center. To set some spacing, you pass in some integers when you actually create a new flow layout. So the first number is the horizontal spacing, and the second number is the vertical spacing. So if we set these both to 0, these buttons are going to be touching, which they are. So let's set the vertical spacing to 10. So now we have 10 pixels worth of space around the components. And then let's set the horizontal spacing to also 10. So now we have extra spacing between these components. With layout managers, you can also add layout managers to panels. So let's create a panel and add all of these buttons to our panel, then add the panel to the frame. So we'll need to create a panel and set this up with a flow layout manager. So let's create a panel, J panel. We'll call this panel equals new J panel. Then let's set a size for this panel as well. So panel.set preferred size. We need to pass in the dimensions by saying new dimension. Let's say this is 250 by 250. And let's set the background color so we can better see this. Panel.set background. Let's say light gray. So color.light gray. All right, so then with these buttons, we're going to be adding these to the panel in place of the frame. So one shortcut that you can do if you're using the Eclipse IDE, select all of the code that you want to edit. If you want to replace a certain word, you can go to Edit, find Replace. I'm going to replace the word frame with panel, and then replace all. All right, so we're going to be adding these buttons to the panel. However, we still need to set the layout manager for the panel because I forgot to do that. So panel.set layout, and then we are passing in a new flow layout. New flow layout. And actually, by default, panels already use a flow layout, but I'm just doing this again for teaching purposes. So this panel has a flow layout, and we're adding all of the buttons to the panel this time. And then we need to add the panel to the frame. So frame.add panel. So this is what this looks like now. This panel is acting as the container, and since these buttons ran out of room within the first row, the next set of buttons got pushed down to the next row. And if we were to change the width of this panel, it's going to push the buttons down even further, down further rows. So let's set the width to now 100. So these buttons are pushed down even further because this panel is using a flow layout, just like what the frame was using in the previous example. So that's the basics of the flow layout manager. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of the flow layout manager in Java. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys all about grid layouts in Java. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. All right, everybody, let's discuss the grid layout manager. So this places components in a grid of cells in a number of rows and columns, with each component taking all of the available space within its cell, and each cell is the same size. So to begin, we'll need a frame. We're going to add buttons to our frame. The frame is going to have a grid layout. So to create a frame, like always, we just say JFrame, we give it a name like frame equals new JFrame, frame.set default close operation, JFrame exit on close, give it a size, the size doesn't matter, and frame.set visible to true. So let's create a whole bunch of buttons. I don't know how many, maybe 9. So to create a button, we just type in JButton. We can give this a name like button1 equals new JButton. And then when we instantiate this, we can set some text to the button. So let's just pass in 1. And then we can add this button to the frame. So frame.add button1. So there's a shortcut you can do that we learned in the last video on flow layout managers. This will still work, but just to save time, I'm going to shorten the lines of code that we have to write. So instead of creating a button with a name, we can create an anonymous button. So all we need to pass in when we add this component to the frame is instead a new JButton, and then you can set the text right away too. The other way works just fine. That just requires more lines of code, but do what you prefer. I'm just shortening this to save some time for us. So we're going to add a bunch of buttons to the frame to demonstrate a grid layout. So I'm going to create 9 separate buttons. All of them will be numbered. And once you have a whole bunch of buttons, it doesn't matter how many, we're ready to move on. With frames, by default, they use a border layout manager. So the components like to take up as much room as possible. So with this button, this number 9 button, it's taking up the entire frame and all the other buttons are hidden underneath. So we need to change the layout manager that we're using for the containing class, which is our frame. So frame.set layout, and we're going to pass in a layout manager. Which layout manager? A new grid layout. Well, because that's what we're learning about. And when we run this, all of these components, all of these buttons are all arranged in one row and one column for each component that we have. But we can specify the amount of rows and columns that we want for this grid. We could say the first number is the amount of rows, and the second number is the amount of columns. So here we have 9 rows and 1 column. So they will all be stacked vertically like this, and then they will expand to fit the size of the frame. But all of the components will also stay the same size as each other. Let's say we want 3 rows and 3 columns. This is what this might look like. So we have 3 rows and 3 columns. And later on in this series, we do create a calculator program as well as a game of tic-tac-toe. So a grid layout works perfect for those programs. Now, when we create our instance of a grid layout, we can also add some arguments for the horizontal margins and vertical margins between these components. So let's add 2 more arguments, and we'll just set them to 0 for now. So this third position is the horizontal spacing between components, and the fourth one is the vertical spacing. So if I were to set this third argument to 10, we're going to have 10 pixels worth of margin between these components, between each column. And this fourth argument is the vertical margin. So if you combine these both together, you have 10 pixels worth of margin around all of the components. Now, what happens if you have an uneven amount of components that you add to a grid layout? So we have 3 by 3, so that works perfect for 9 components. Let's say that we add 1 more. We're going to add a 10th button. Like that. So what happens now is that this will actually create a new column for us. So we have 3 rows and 4 columns, and it tries to make this as evenly balanced as possible. So that's the basics of grid layout managers. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of grid layouts in Java. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys all about J-layered panes in Java, so you can do cool stuff like this, such as stack components on a GUI frame. So let's get into it. Before you reach the end of this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that we together can challenge and defeat the mighty YouTube algorithm. Hey everyone, I'm going to be teaching you guys about the J-layered pane. What this is that this is a swing container that provides a third dimension for positioning components. So think of it like the depth or the z-index. So this is very similar to a J panel, except we can also specify different layers on the J-layered pane. We can have components be stacked on top of one another or underneath. So let's begin by creating an instance of the J-layered pane. So what we're going to do here is just type in J-layered pane. We need a name for this pane, so we'll call this just layered pane with a lowercase l equals new J-layered pane. Now we're also going to need a J-frame setup, and we've done this in previous videos, so if you need a J-frame, feel free to pause the video and type all of this in. So make sure that the layout manager is set to null. Now what we're going to do with this layered pane is actually add this to our J-frame, but first we're going to set the bounds for this. So we're going to type in the name of our J-layered pane, dot set bounds. And then I would recommend just picking the same dimensions for your J-frame, or you can pick a different size, but I think for this example we should have it be the same. So I'm going to set this where X is 0 and Y is 0, so this will begin in the top left corner. I want this to be 500 pixels for the width and 500 for the height. Now what we're going to do is actually add this layered pane to our J-frame, and I'll do that right underneath where we instantiate this J-frame. So frame.add layered pane. So now we have a layered pane attached to our J-frame, and now we can add components to our layered pane here. So let's take a look to see what we have so far. Here is our J-frame. It is 500 by 500, and there is an invisible layered pane attached to here. So we'll actually need to add some components so we can see this in action. So we'll need to add some, maybe J-labels or some other components to this. I like J-labels, so let's add those. So J-label, and we'll call this label, label1, equals new J-label. And we're going to take label1 and set this to opaque. Set opaque true so we can actually see this. And let's add a background color. So label1 dot set background, and then we'll place the words color dot red. And since we're not using a layout manager, we're going to set the bounds for this label on our layered pane. So label1 dot set bounds, and we'll have this label begin where X is 50
y is 50. And for the dimensions, this will be 200 by 200. All right, so let's do the same thing, and we can just copy these and make maybe 2 more labels. So we'll have label 1, label 2, and label 3. But make sure to change it here as well, so you'll want these also to be their respective labels. So label 2 for this paragraph here, and then label 3 for everything here. Let's change the second label to be maybe green, the third one to maybe blue, and we'll also change the bounds. So I'll have the second one begin where x is 100 and y is 100. And then for label 3, I'll have this begin where x is 150 and y is 150. So what we need to do next is actually add all of these labels to our layered pane. So let's do that after we instantiate our layered pane. So we can add that right here. So type in the name of your layered pane, dot add, and the name of the component that you want to add. So let's add label 1. And let's do the same thing for each of these components. So do the same thing for label 2 and label 3. So let's run this and see what we have so far. Now label 1 is our red box. So the first component by default that is added to your layered pane will appear on the top. The next one will be underneath, and so on and so forth with that pattern. So we can actually change the order in which these are stacked on top of each other. And with layered panes, there's actually a name for each layer. Here's a visual. All right, everyone. Well, here's a visual of all the layers within a J-layered pane. So each of these layers actually has a specific name, and you can specify which layer in which you want to add a component. And when these are all stacked on top of each other, it adds some depth to a program. So it appears that visuals are stacked on top of each other. Now, you don't have to remember all these names. There's actually a shortcut I'm going to show you guys in just a moment. But let's begin just by adding 2 components to our default layer and maybe 1 to our drag layer. So let's head back to our program and try that. So with label 1 and label 2, what we're going to do is that if we want to add this to the bottom layer, which is the drag layer, we're going to add the component followed by a comma, then type in J layered pane dot. You can actually pick the layers from here. So the bottom one was default. So let's see if we can find that default layer. So let's copy this and add this to label 2. Then let's take label 3 and add this to the top layer, which was drag. So I have an extra comma there. Let me fix that. Okay, so that was drag layer, which is right here. So when we run this, the blue box is actually going to appear at the top, and the rest are at the bottom. So there's actually a shortcut for this because, let's be honest, we're not going to remember all the different layer names and their order. So what we can do in place of typing JLayered pane dot, then pick a layer, what you can do is just add a number, and there's an associated number with each layer. Let's say we want the base layer, that is 0. But we need to do one more thing just besides place a number here. We need to use the wrapper class. So type in integer dot value of, and then place the layer number. So if we want this at the bottom, we can just place layer 0. So just type in number 0. And let's add label 3 on top of that. So we can just copy this and say integer dot value of 1. And then let's place the green box at the very top. So we'll say integer dot value of 2. You could also pick a higher number here as well. So what ends up happening now is that our green box is at the very top. So the higher the number, the higher the placement is when you stack these on top of each other. So that's really the basics of J-layered panes. You add components to a J-layered pane, specify the layered number or by name, and then add the layered pane to your frame or other container. So if you'd like a copy of all this code, I'll post this in the comments down below. And well, yeah, that's the basics of using J-layered panes in Java. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how we can open a new window using Java Swing. So let's get into it. Before you reach the end of this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that we together can challenge and defeat the mighty YouTube algorithm. Alright everyone, so we're going to create a new project. So if you're using Eclipse, go to File, New, Java Project, and I'll call this project How to Open a New Window. I know I'm really creative like that. And then click Finish, and we're not going to create a module for this. Now we're going to go to our project, locate the source folder, and we're going to create 3 files. So File, New, Class. I'll call the first one Main, and it's going to hold our main method, so you'll want to be sure to click this checkbox here. Click Finish. Let's go back to our source folder. File, New, Class, and let's call this second file Launch Page. It's going to launch a new window when we click on a button, and then click Finish, and then back to the source folder, File, New, File, New, Class, and we'll call this New Window. This is the window we're trying to open. So New Window, and then click Finish. All right, now within your main class, this is what we're going to type. We're going to create an instance of our launch page. So we're going to type in the name of the class, launch page, and we'll call this launch page with a lowercase l equals new launch page. And that's it for our main method. In fact, our entire main class here. So we're going to do some things on our launch page here. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is to create our constructor. We'll call this launch page so it matches the class name. And then we're going to declare 2 objects within our class, but before the constructor, a JFrame frame equals new JFrame. And I'm thinking what we can do for this project is that this page will only contain a button, and when we click on the button, it'll bring us to a new page. So we'll do something simple like that. Then I'm just going to import these things, so javax.swing. And then let's create a J button to put on this frame. So J button, and we'll call this my button equals new J button. And we can set some text on this button right away. We'll just type in new window. And then we'll need to import this. Okay, let's go to our constructor and add a few things. So let's create the frame first. So frame dot set default close operation. And then within the parentheses, jframe dot exit on close. So this will actually stop when we exit out of it. And then we'll need to set a size for this frame. So frame dot set size. I usually pick 420 by 420. And then we need to set a layout. Frame dot set layout. And then I usually type in null because I like to manually place everything. And then we need to set the visibility to true. So frame dot set visible true. Okay, let's create our button and add it to our frame. So we'll do that before our frame within our constructor. So that is called my button. That's the name of our button. My button dot set bounds, and we'll place this where x is 100, and then maybe where y is 160. This will be 200 pixels long and 40 pixels for the height. Then this is normally focusable, so we want to set focusable to false. It's not entirely necessary, but sometimes buttons are highlighted and it's kind of annoying. And then we need to add an action listener. So my button dot add action listener. And then within parentheses, just type in this. Now we'll need this class to implement the action listener interface. So right next to your class name, type in implements action listener. And we'll probably need an import. Okay, so we'll need this import as well. And we need to add unimplemented methods. So this is going to be our action performed method when we click on the button. But first we should make sure that everything is here. So let's see if our button is actually on the panel. Oh, nope, not yet, because we need to add the button to the frame because I forgot. So frame.add my button. Honestly, that's very easy to do, to forget to add something to your frame. Okay, it should be there now. Yeah, we're good. So it currently doesn't do anything. So what we should do is that we're going to create a new instance of our new window class whenever we click on this button. So go to your action performed method. And this is what we're going to type. If e.get source parentheses is equal to my button, we're going to trigger an event. So what we'll do is create a new instance of our new window class. So new window, and we'll call this maybe my window equals new window. That's kind of a tongue twister. Maybe I should have named it something different, but hey, it works. Okay, so then when we click on this, it's going to launch an instance of our new window class, but we actually have to work on that class now because it doesn't appear to do anything. So that's pretty much everything for our launch page. There's one more line that we're going to add near the end of this, so we'll be heading back here later. So let's go to our new window class then. So what we're going to do here is create a constructor first. So new window, parentheses, curly braces. And outside of our constructor, we're going to create a JFrame so we can actually see what's going on. So JFrame, and we'll call this frame equals new JFrame, parentheses, semicolon. And let's create a label that'll just say hello so we can see something. So we'll create a J label, and we'll call this label equals new J label. And let's set some text such as hello. Then we're going to do a few things within our constructor, but we need to import a few things. All right, so within our constructor, we're going to create a frame, and honestly, we can just copy this from our launch page. So frame.setDefaultCloseOperation, we need to set the size, a layout, and the visibility. And I'm just gonna copy all this because I'm lazy and paste it right in here near the end. Let's work on our label. So label.set bounds, we'll place this where x is 0, where y is 0. This will be 100 pixels long and a height of 50 pixels. And let's also set the font, just because it's normally like very small. So label.set font, new font, parentheses. So we don't really care for a font type, but if you want a specific font, you can place that here. I'll just set it to the default and put null here. We'll have this be plain, so font.plain, and a size of 25. And we need to import something as well. There we go. And we need to add the label to the frame. So I'll do that here. Frame.add label. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, let's click on the new window button to launch a new window. All right, we got one. One problem though, if we keep on clicking on this button, we'll keep on getting new windows. So we have like a bunch here. So if you only want there to be one window, this is what you can do. So going back to our launch page, so the first line within our action performed method within our if statement, this is what we're going to type. Frame.dispose, parentheses, semicolon. So it's going to basically close out of our frame. So now if we were to run this and we click on the new window button, it's going to get rid of the launch page and open a new window. So to sum up everything, if you want to open a new window, you'll want to create an instance of the class that contains the window that you want to appear. And then you'll want to hook this up to like some sort of event to trigger it. And in my case, it's a button. So when we click the button here, it's going to perform the action performed method and then create an instance of our new window class then. So there's other ways that you can instantiate a new window of this class or whatever else you want to name this. But you usually need some way to actually trigger this being instantiated. But for this example, we just have this hooked up to a button. But yeah, that's the basics of opening a new window in Java. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post it in the comments down below. And that's one of a few ways to open a new window in Java.
Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how we can create dialog boxes in Java. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running.
Hey, I'm going to teach you guys about JOptionPaint. This is a pop-up standard dialog box that prompts the user for a value or informs them of something. Before we begin, we'll need this import at the top, javax.swing.joptionpaint. There's a few variations of dialog boxes that we can create. Let's begin with a standard message that informs the user of something. So in order to create a dialog box, we need to type in the name of JOptionPaint, which is the name of this class, JOptionPaint dot, and a simple message is show message dialog. So that's show message dialog. And there's three variations of this. They each have different arguments that they accept. So the second one accepts 4 arguments, a parent component, a message, a title, and a message type. For now, we'll just set the parent component to null because we don't have one. A message, this can be any sort of message. So this is what will appear within the dialog box. This is some useless info. You can set a title for this box. I'll just set this to title, and then a message type, and there's a few variations of these. So a plain vanilla message would be JOption, make sure you get the capitalization right, JOptionPaint dot plain message. So this is a plain message with no styling whatsoever. And this is what we have. Here's our dialog box. The title is set to title. This is some useless info. Okay, thanks for letting me know. This fourth argument is the message type. So depending on what value we place here, it's going to give our message dialog box a different look and feel. So there's 5 I'm going to show you. This is one of them. I'm just going to copy and paste this 5 times and then give you a demonstration of each. So the first one was a plain message. The second one I'll introduce to you guys is information message. The third is going to be a question message. Then a warning message. And then an error message. And then I'll turn these into comments just so that they all don't appear at once. So this is the look and feel for the information message, the second one. So maybe I'll change this to, here is more useless info. All right, so what's different about this one is that there's this icon in the top left corner of this dialog box that just says I, and it says, here's more useless info. Okay, great. So our third dialog box is question message. And I'll change the message here. Like we're asking a question. Really? So we have a question mark icon and it says, really? Okay. This fourth one you guys will probably like. This is a warning message. So this is one thing that you might see during like those fake tech support scams where there'll be like a pop-up dialog box that says your computer has a virus. Let's mimic something like that. Your computer has a virus. And this is a warning message. Your computer has a virus. So if you want to be annoying, what you could do is stick this within a while loop. While true, basically do this forever. So this isn't going to go away even if we were to click OK or exit out of this. So your computer has a virus. Okay, I can't seem to click out of this, so it's just going on forever. So that's one annoying thing you can do. That's a cool trick you can show your friends. So let's go over the last one. That is error message. We can let the user know that something went wrong. So that is this last one. I'm going to turn that into a comment for now. So this is JOptionPaint.error message. Call tech support now or else. Man, they're really getting desperate with these scams. They're starting to threaten people. And this is the error message. It has a red X within what looks like a stop sign. All right, so those are basic message dialog boxes. We can also have the user respond to something, and we can actually ask for a yes, no, or cancel response. So a different dialog box is show confirm dialog. So J option pane dot show confirm dialog. So it's the same as before. We have a parent component, message, title, and an option type. So for parent component, I'm going to set this to null. Message, we can ask whatever we want. Bro, do you even code? Pick a title. This is my title. And then an option type, so J, option, pane, dot, and we can select what kinds of responses we want available. We can have yes, no, cancel options, just yes, no, or only yes. Let's go with yes, no, cancel. And then we need a semicolon at the end. And this is what we have. Here's our confirm dialog box. It has our question, bro, do you even code? And there are different buttons you can add to this dialog box. So we added the one with yes, no, and cancel. But currently this doesn't do anything. So let's actually display what this returns using a println statement. So system.out.println, I'm going to take this whole line of code and put this within the println statement. Then I need to get rid of that semicolon. There. All right, so if we were to select yes, this returns 0, no returns 1, cancel returns 2, and then if you click the X button, it returns -1. One technique available to you, you could store this within a variable. Let's say int answer equals j option pane dot show confirm dialog. Based on the value that is stored within this variable, you could run this through an if statement or a switch, and depending on the answer or what value is stored within here, you can do one of a few things. So that's how show confirm dialog works. Next, we have show input dialog, where the user can actually type in something. So to do that, it is j option pane dot show input dialog. And we can simply just put a message within here, like, what is your name? And then we can store the result in a variable like string name equals j option pane dot show input dialog. And then I'm going to turn this into a comment and run this. So what is your name? My name is bro. Okay. And then we can like display this or something. So hello plus name. And let's try that again. What is your name? Bro. Okay. Hello, bro. Okay, people, so the last one I have for you guys today is show option dialog. This combines all of them together into one. So that is j option pane dot show option dialog. And there are a ton of arguments within here, but it's okay. We're going to go through these one at a time. So for the parent component, we're going to set this to null. What do we want our message to be? Maybe you are awesome. You can set a title. I'll set this to secret message. You can set an option type. So these are the buttons that you want to add, or the response type for this dialog box. So J option pane dot, you can select whatever you want. I'll just have the standard yes, no, cancel option. Then a message type, that's what we added up here at the top for our message dialog boxes. For now, I'll just set this to perhaps information message. So that is J option pane, information, message. We can also add our own icon and our own options for our buttons, but for now, I'll just set these to null, but we'll get into that in just a moment. So null, null, and the initial value is what is initially selected. I'll just set this to 0. And then a semicolon at the end. Okay, let's try this. You are awesome. No, I'll be humbled this time. Okay, so let's actually add our own icon to this. It's going to replace whatever icon we have set for the message type. So I'm going to create an image icon out of this image that I have. It's just called smile.png. So I need to create an image icon. Image icon, I'll call this icon, equals new image icon. I need to set the file path or the file name if it's within the same project folder. So this is smile.png. I'll need an import as well for this. Okay, so I have this image icon just called icon. I'm going to add that to this argument here. It's the third from the last one, so that is icon. And this should override the previous symbol that we have. So now it's using my image in place of the I symbol that we had previously. We can also add our own options for these buttons, but this will take an array of components or reference data types. So let's create an array of strings. So a string, an array of strings, we'll call this responses. What do we want to add to these buttons in place of yes, no, cancel? So maybe for the first option, no, you're awesome. Then for the second option, perhaps, thank you. And for the third option, we'll just maybe blush. All right, so we take this array and we're going to place it in the second to last argument. I think I'm going to add these all on a new line just so we can see everything here, because it's getting very long. All right, we should be good. And this is the value that you initially want to be selected. So if you want the first button selected, set this to 0. If you want the second one, set this to 1. And here is our dialog box. Secret message, you are awesome. No, you're awesome, thank you, or blush. No, you're awesome. All right, so that's the basics of JOptionPane. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of JOptionPane in Java. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your bro here, hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how we can create a text field in Java. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Okay, everybody, we're going to be creating a JText field. This is a GUI text box component that can be used to add, set, or get some text. So imagine you're logging into a website and you type in your username and password. Well, those boxes are perfect examples of text boxes. We're also going to create a submit button so that when we enter in a username, we can submit whatever text we enter in. But we're going to implement an action listener, so it's best if we create a new class to do this. So within my source folder, I'm going to go to File, New, Class, and I will call this class MyFrame. MyFrame will extends JFrame, so it's going to behave exactly as a JFrame. This will also implements the action listener interface so that this frame can listen for events like a button click when we want to submit a username. So make sure to add all of these imports. And since we're implementing an interface, we need to add any unimplemented methods. So make sure to add public void action performed. We're also going to create a constructor for this class, so my frame, and we have to go through the motions of setting up a frame. I'm going to copy and paste this. So you just type in this.set default close operation, JFrame exit on close. We're going to use a flow layout for this example, so make sure you use a flow layout. You can also set this to null if you want, but you have to manually place your components. We're going to pack this frame so that the size of the frame will adjust to fit the components that you add, and then finish this up with this.set visible true. And then we have to create an instance of this frame. So we'll say my frame equals new my frame. Let's head back to our my frame class, and we're going to create a JText field. So JText field, we'll call this text field, equals new JText field. And we'll need an import for this. Import JText field. And let's set some dimensions for this text field. So text field dot set preferred size, and we'll pass in a new dimension. Let's say 250 by 40. So 250 for the width and 40 for the height. And we'll need an import for dimension. Now we need to add this text field to our frame. So make sure you add this before you actually pack the frame. So this dot add, we're adding our text field. And we should have a text field now within our frame, which we do. And we can type in text like this. What if we want to submit some text? We'll probably want a button. So let's create a button to the left-hand side of this text field. So J button, we'll call this button equals new J button. And we can set some text right away too. Let's say submit. And we're going to add this button to our frame. So this dot add button. Now you notice we have a submit button, but it currently doesn't do anything. So we need to add an action listener. So let's do that here. Button dot add action listener. Since this class is implementing an action listener interface, we can simply just pass in this. And when this frame detects an event, we can check to see if that event is the button. So if e.getSource is equal to our button, we're going to do something. We're going to take our text field dot get text. Okay, but let's take a look at this. Our button and our text field are not recognized. That's because we declared our button and text field within the constructor, so they're only local to the constructor. We need to declare these outside of the constructor so that they're global. So we'll copy this and paste it. JButton button, that's all we need, as well as JTextField text field. So here we're declaring this twice. We don't need to do that. Since we declared these components outside of the constructor, they are now global so that this action performed method now has access to them. So make sure to take out JButton for the button and JTextField for the text field. And now these should be recognized. All right, so we're going to use this method, getText, to retrieve whatever text is within our text box, our text field. So let's print out a message. I'm going to surround this with a print line statement. So we could say maybe welcome plus whatever the text is that somebody types in. Let's try this. So let's say we enter in our username, BroCode, and click submit. It says welcome BroCode. Let's customize the appearance of this text field. Well, because we can. So let's begin by changing the font. So text field dot set font, and we can pass in a new font and pick whatever font you want. I will pick Consolas, and then we can say font.plain or bold or italic. And then we can also pick a font size. So I will pick 35. 35 is a good number. And let's take a look. That's pretty sweet. Let's change the font color. So we do that with set foreground, text field dot set foreground. And we can pass in a color like color dot green, or we can pass in some RGB values or a hex value. So we can do that with new color. And I'm just going to use a hex value this time. You can look these up online. That is for green 0x00FF00. So this is a bright green color. Sweet. Let's change the background color. So text field dot set background, and we can pass in like a preset color or a new color. I'm just going to turn this to black. So color dot black. And now we have a black J text field. But you can see that the caret, that's that line that is blinking. It's a little difficult to see. We can actually change the color of that as well. So text field dot set caret, well, set caret color, then we can pass in a color. So I will pick color dot white. And this caret, this line, when you type in something, is now visible. Let's set the text of our text field. So text field dot set text, and we pass in a string. We could place the string username here so that somebody knows to type in their username. So it just says username, but you can edit this and type in whatever you want. Hacker123. If for some reason you need to prevent somebody from editing this text field, you can do so with the set editable method. So we type in the name of the text field, dot set editable, and we can set this to false. So that when set editable is set to false, we can no longer edit this text field, even though I'm trying really hard to do so. Here's an idea. What if we disabled the text field as well as this button after we submit a username? So within this action performed method, we're going to get rid of this line, text field.set editable false, place this within our action performed method, and let's also disable that button as well. So button.set enabled, and we'll set this to false. So that after we submit a username, like hacker123, and click submit, we can no longer submit another username. So that's an option that's also available to you. So yeah, that's the basics of creating JText fields in Java. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of creating a JText field in Java. What's going on, everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how we can create a simple checkbox in Java. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Alright everyone, we're going to be creating a JCheckbox. This is a GUI component that can be selected or deselected. So let me give you a rundown of my setup that I have. We covered this in the last video. So we have two classes, a main class. It doesn't really matter what you call it, as long as it contains a main method. We're going to create a new instance of myFrame. So myFrame will extends JFrame, so it behaves exactly like a JFrame, but it also implements an action listener interface. Within the constructor of myFrame, I have this.set default close operation, JFrame exit on close. We're using a flow layout manager. We're going to pack this frame and set the visibility to true. And then we'll also need an action performed method so we can listen for events. All right, once you have all of that, we're ready to begin. This is how to create a JCheckbox. So within the constructor, for now, I'm just going to declare a JCheckbox. JCheckbox. And we will call this checkbox equals new JCheckbox. We'll probably need an import, so include that. And then I'm adding this checkbox to the frame. So before we pack this.add the name of your checkbox. And this is what we have so far. Just a simple selectable checkbox, but we'll probably want to add some text. We don't know what we're selecting exactly. So after we create this checkbox, let's set the text. You can either pass this into the constructor, or we can use the set text method. So checkbox.setText. And we'll place some sample text like, I'm not a robot. Seriously, guys, I'm not. And this is what we have now. I'm not a robot. Last time I checked, I wasn't. So there's this annoying border around the text. We can get rid of that. You have to set focusable to false. Checkbox.set focusable false. And that will take care of that issue. So this text is somewhat small and difficult to read. We can actually change the font too. Checkbox.set font, new font, and pass in whatever font you want. You can copy me if you want. So Consolas, font, plain, and then a size. 35 is good, but doesn't matter what you pick. And that's a little bit easier to read. So what can we do with this? Let's create a button, and when we click on this button, it's going to tell us if this is selected or not. So let's create a button before this checkbox. So that's a J button. We'll call this button equals new J button. and we'll need an import as well. And let's set some text. You can either pass this into the constructor, a string, or we can use the set text method. So button.setText. And I will set this to submit. We're also going to need to add an action listener. So button.add action listener. Since we're implementing an action listener interface, we can simply just pass in this. All right, so we have an action listener that's attached to this button. When we click on the button, it's going to trigger this action performed method. So we need to check to see if the event that happens is equal to the button. So if e.getSource is equal to our button. Now let's take a look at this button. This button is not recognized, or this action performed method does not recognize this button. That's because we declared this button within the constructor. So we should make this global by declaring this outside of the constructor, because right now it's only local to everything within our constructor. So I'm going to copy this portion, paste it, and we do not need to declare this twice. So at the top, JButton button, then button equals new JButton. So then our action performed method now recognizes this button. And we'll need to do the same thing with our checkbox. So checkbox equals new checkbox. Now we're going to determine to see if this checkbox is selected. So there's a function to do that, checkbox.isSelected. And this is going to return true or false. For now, I'll just print this. So system.out.println, and we're going to print the result. You can also assign this to a variable too. That would work as well. And let's try this. I am not a robot. Oh, we need to add the button. Crap. Let's do that. So this dot add button. I sometimes forget to add components. You will too, probably. All right. I'm not a robot. Cool. This says I am not a robot. Now I am a robot. Now I'm not. Now I am. So did you guys know you can actually change the appearance of this checkbox? We can set this to an image. So I have a few images that I want to use. This picture of an X, I just called this x.png, and a picture of a green check mark. So I want to change the checkbox to these images when the checkbox is deselected or selected. So I'm just going to create some image icons. Feel free to pause the video if you want to look for some icons that you want to use. So image icon, I will call the X icon just X icon. And then we have another image icon, and I will call this check icon. And then I will finish instantiating these within our constructor. Right here is good, I suppose. All right, so X icon equals new image icon. And we list where this is located. Since this is within my project folder, I can just list the name. So that is x.png. And I'll do the same thing for my checkmark icon here. So that is check icon. And the name is checkmark.png. To add an icon to a checkbox, when it's deselected, you type in the name of the checkbox, and we use the .setIcon method, and we pass in an icon that we want to use. We want to use this X icon, which is the red X that we have. And this is our icon. However, if we were to click on this, it doesn't appear to do anything, even though we can toggle this between checked and unchecked, selected or deselected. So we're also going to combine this with set selected icon. So checkbox.set selected icon, and I'm going to use my check icon. And then now when we run this, we can actually change the image when we select this checkbox. All right, so that's the basics of creating a simple checkbox in Java. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of creating a checkbox in Java. What's going on, everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys all about radio buttons in Java. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Well, howdy, y'all. We're going to be talking about radio buttons in this video. So the definition of JRadio buttons is that these are one or more buttons in a grouping in which only one may be selected per group. So let me give you a demonstration of my setup before we actually get into radio buttons. I have two classes, one just called main, it contains my main method, and an instance of my other class, myFrame. So myFrame extends JFrame, it behaves exactly like a JFrame, it also implements an action listener. And within this constructor, I just have this.set default close operation, JFrame exit on close. I'm using a new flow layout, this.pack and this.set visible set to true. And then I also have an action performed method within here. So let's get started by making some JRadio buttons. Here's a scenario for this example. Let's say that I'm buying you lunch because I'm such a nice guy, but you can only pick one item from the menu. You can pick either a slice of pizza, a hamburger, or a hot dog. So we're going to create 3 radio buttons and you can select one of those choices. And we're going to place all of these within one grouping. So let's begin by creating a radio button for pizza. So to create a radio button, it is J radio button. And we'll call this radio button the pizza button. J radio button pizza button equals new J radio button. All right, let's do the same thing for a hamburger button and a hot dog button. So JRadio button, this will be our hamburger button, and then a hot dog button. So we can set some text. We can either use the set text method, or we can just pass in a string within the constructor. So just for convenience, I'm going to pass in pizza, then hamburger, then hot dog. And then we need to add these buttons to the frame. So this dot add, let's add our pizza button first, followed by hamburger and then hot dog. And this is what we should have. All right, we have pizza, hamburger, and hot dog. But wait a second, we've been bamboozled. We can select all of these items if we wanted. So we can actually limit the choice selection to only one item, but we have to put all of these radio buttons within the same grouping. Because right now, we can select all of these, and I promised you only one thing for lunch today. So we need to place these within a button group. So let's place this here. We're going to create a new button group, and we'll just call this group equals new button group. And then we need to add these radio buttons to this group. We can do that by typing in the name of the group, dot add, and what are we adding? All of these buttons. So let's add the pizza button, followed by the hamburger button, so group dot add hamburger button, and then the hot dog button. And now we can only select one item. One thing you should know, every time that you select one of these choices, it's actually triggering an event, and we can use our action performed method to detect which button was selected. So within our action performed method, we can place a simple if statement. If e.get source is equal to, let's begin with our pizza button. If somebody selects the pizza button, then they get pizza. So let's do a system.out.println, you ordered pizza. But notice, this action performed method does not recognize our pizza button. That's because we declared our pizza button within the constructor of our myFrame class. So this is a local component. We need to turn this global. So we can do that by just declaring this outside of our constructor. Since we've declared this pizza button outside of the constructor, this action performed method does recognize it now. However, we want to get rid of this portion where we declare this pizza button twice, but we do want to finish instantiating this, and we should do the same thing for our hamburger button as well as our hot dog button. So we're going to declare these, but not yet instantiate them until we're within our constructor. So hamburger button equals new JRadio button, and then we want to declare the hot dog button outside of the constructor, and then instantiate it within the constructor. So then the action performed method can actually recognize all of these components. So if e.getSource is equal to the pizza button, we'll print you ordered pizza. Then we'll do the same thing for our hamburger button and our hot dog button. And let's just use an else if statement to keep this simple. There's more sophisticated ways of doing this, but we're still noobs, so it's okay if we do if statements. So if e.getSource is equal to the hamburger button, I don't feel like typing all of this, so I'm going to paste it. Then we will just system.out.println, you ordered a hamburger. And then else if e.getSource is equal to our hot dog button. System.out.println, you ordered a hot dog. And let's run this. Here we have our pizza button, hamburger button, and our hot dog button. But wait a second, we've been bamboozled again, because when we select these, it's not printing out our message. Well, that's because we still need to add an action listener to each of these buttons. So let's work on that next. I'll just add them here. So let's select each of these buttons. So we have our pizza button, and we need to add an action listener. So pizza button.add action listener. Now, since we're implementing an action listener interface, we can simply just pass in this. And then let's do the same thing for our hamburger button and our hot dog button. Now these radio buttons will be able to listen for events, and when we click on one of our radio buttons, we will order our selected item. You ordered a pizza, you ordered a hamburger, and you ordered a hot dog. This is entirely optional, but you can actually change the icons that you're using for these radio buttons. So within my project folder, I have 3 images that I want to use. An emoji of a slice of pizza, a hot dog, and a hamburger. So I'm going to create some image icons out of these, and we're going to set the icon for each of these radio buttons to that image. So if you have a few in mind, let's begin. So let's create a few image icons. So for my first icon, this will be my pizza icon. Then I'll do the same thing for hamburger and hot dog. And then within the constructor, I'll finish instantiating these. So pizza icon equals new image icon. And I'm going to list the file path of where this is located. Since this is within my same project folder, I can just simply list the file name. So my first image is pizza.png. And then hamburger, then hot dog. Alright, so I have all of my image icons set up. Now to add an icon to a button, there is a function to do so. I'll add them here. So type in the name of the button. There it is, pizza button. Dot, you can either set icon or set selected icon. I'm just going to use set icon and list the icon that you want to use. I want to use my pizza icon. So I'll put that here, and then let's do the same for the other buttons. So hamburger button, dot set icon, hamburger icon. And then lastly, hot dog. And now those circles are going to be replaced with our images, and they work just the same. So we have a slice of pizza, a hamburger, and a hot dog. All right, so that's the basics of creating radio buttons in Java. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of creating radio buttons in Java. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys all about combo boxes in Java. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Alright, all you wonderful people, let's discuss JCombo boxes. This is a GUI component that combines a button or editable field and a drop-down list. We can create a drop-down list and select one of a few different items. So before we begin, here's my setup. I have two classes, a main class that contains my main method, and then a myFrame class, which extends JFrame and implements the action listener interface. And then within the main class, I just created an instance of myFrame. So within this myFrame class, I have a constructor, this .setDefaultClose operation, JFrame exit on close. We're using a new flow layout, and we're going to finish this with this .pack and this .setVisible set to true. This is the standard procedure for us that we've been doing for this GUI tutorial series. And then we also have an action performed method that will respond to certain events. Now let's create a JCombo box. I'm going to place that here. So let's first declare this, that is JCombo box, and we will call this combo box equals new JCombo box. Now we have our combo box, but we need to populate this combo box with a listing of different options that the user can select. So when we construct this JCombo box, we can pass into the constructor an array of reference data types. These can be objects, or they can be primitive data types, but you have to use the wrapper class. Let's say that we want a drop-down menu of animals, and a user can select one of these. So a string is actually a reference data type, but it has to be an array. So we'll create a string array called animals, and let's fill this array with some animal names. So let's say dog, and then cat, and then maybe bird. So with this array of animals, we can pass this into our constructor when we create our JCombo box. And then lastly, we just need to add this combo box to the frame. So this .add, and we are adding our combo box. And then when we run this, we have a drop-down menu, a combo box, and we can select one of these items. However, it currently doesn't do anything, so within the action performed method, we need to fill in a few things. And actually, whenever we select one of these items, it's actually triggering an event. So within the action performed method, we will create an if statement if e.getSource is equal to our combo box. Then what we're going to do, well, we can do one of a few things. But first, this action performed method does not recognize our combo box. That's because we declared this combo box within the constructor, so it's local. We need to turn this global by declaring this outside of the constructor. So JCombo box, combo box, and we do not need to declare this twice. Since we're declaring this combo box within the class, everything within the class now recognizes this. So our action performed method now recognizes this combo box. So if our combo box does something, then what we could do is get the current selected item. So let's type in the name of the combo box dot selected item, and then I'll just print this. So let's put this within a print line statement. So system.out.println, I'm going to copy this and paste it. System.out.println combo box.getSelected item. However, we need to add an action listener to this combo box because it still doesn't return what we want basically. So we need to add an action listener to this combo box. So let's add that here. Combo box.add action listener. Since this class is implementing the action listener interface, we can just pass in this, and this will work just fine then. So then, whenever we select an item from this JCombo box, it's going to trigger an event and get the current selected item. So let's say we want a dog, well, we have a dog, cat, and then bird. Another method that functions similarly to getSelectedItem is getSelectedIndex. So for now, I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to turn this into a comment so we can ignore it. And then we're going to use the getSelectedIndex method instead. So combobox.getSelectedIndex. And this will return the index of what we select. So this always begins with index 0. So dog would be 0, it prints 0. Bird would be 2, and then cat would be 1. Here's a few helpful methods that you might find useful for combo boxes. And in order to use these methods, we type in the name of the combo box, dot, and here's a bunch of the different methods available to you. Let's begin with set editable, and we can set this to true. And what this does is that when we set the editability to true, we can actually type in something to look for. So let's say that I want to select cat. I can just simply type in cat, or I can select it from this drop-down menu and it returns that item that we selected. Let's go over a few others. So we can actually get the item count. So that is combo box.get item count. And then we'll need to display this. So let's put this within a println statement. So system.out.println combo box.get item count. And this prints the current amount of items, which is 3. We can also add an item later. So combo box.add item. So we need to pass in an object, a reference data type. Let's pass in a string, maybe a horse. So with add item, this will add an item to the end of this. So now we have dog, cat, bird, horse. We can also insert something at a certain index. So combo box dot insert item at. We need an item and an index. Let's say we want pig for the first item at index 0. So let's pass in a string that says pig and then an index 0. So this should be at the beginning now. However, it's not currently selected. See, pig is at the top, but dog was selected. So we can actually set the selected item at a certain index when this runs. So in order to do that, it's combo box dot set selected index, and you pass in an index. So if I were to set this to 0, it's always going to select index 0 when this first runs. So now our item pig is now selected because we have set selected index set to 0, and our item pig is now set to 0. We can also remove an item too. So let's turn these into a comment just to ignore these. So combo box dot remove item. And let's say we want to remove our cat because our cat ran away, but don't worry, he'll come back. So now we only have dog and bird. We can also remove items at a certain index. So combo box dot remove item at. And let's say 0. So whatever item is at index 0, it's going to remove that. So this time our dog ran away. He went to go chase the mailman. So we only have a cat and a bird. And I have one more for you guys. So combo box dot remove all items. And this will clear our combo box so that there is nothing within here. So this could probably be useful for something if you need to reset it. One thing that you should remember is that with these J combo boxes, we need to pass in an array of reference data types. For example, if we attempted to pass in an array of integers, well, since this is a primitive data type, this actually wouldn't work. Let's say we're attempting to store the numbers 1, 2, and 3 and add these to our J combo box. So in order to do something like this, we would have to use the wrapper class version of this. So for integer, it is integer with a capital I and you spell it fully. If this were double instead of lowercase double, this would be capital double because This is the wrapper class version of a double. So just make sure that you're using wrapper classes if you need to store a primitive data type within an array. All right, so that's the basics of combo boxes in Java. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of combo boxes in Java. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to be teaching you guys all about JSliders in Java. And at the end of this video, we're going to create a project where we can use a slider to adjust the temperature. So let's get into it. Before you reach the end of this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that we together can challenge and defeat the mighty YouTube algorithm. Alright everyone, so a JSlider is a GUI component that lets the user enter a value by using an adjustable sliding knob on a track. So to best demonstrate this, let's create another class to keep things organized. So go to your source folder, go to File, New, Class, and let's call this class Slider Demo. Click Finish, and then we're going to go back to our main class and create an instance of this Slider Demo class. So we're going to type Slider Demo, and we'll call this Slider Demo with a lowercase s equals new Slider Demo, parentheses, semicolon. So let's head to that class and start working here. So we're going to need a few things to import, so make sure you have these three imports: java.awt.asterisk, javax.swing.asterisk, and javax.swing.event.asterisk. Now with this class, we're going to implement the change listener interface. So next to our class definition, we're going to type implements change listener. So then with our slider, we can actually update something whenever we make a change. Now we're going to add an unimplemented method, and it's going to be state changed, but we're going to save that for the very end. First, let's work on our constructor for this slider demo class. So we'll just copy this and paste it, add a set of parentheses and a set of curly braces. Now what we'll do is actually declare a few global objects here. So the first thing is that we'll want a frame, so JFrame, and we'll call this frame. And that's it for now. We'll actually instantiate these within the constructor. We're also going to want a JPanel, so JPanel, and we'll call this panel. We'll need a label, so JLabel, label, and lastly a slider, which is the main piece of this lesson. So to do that, you need to declare a JSlider, and we'll call this slider. All right, now going within our constructor here, we're going to instantiate these objects. So the first thing that we'll create is our frame. So frame equals new JFrame, and let's set the text to slider, but spell it right, slider demo. And then we will want to instantiate our panel because we're going to add the panel to the frame. So panel equals new JPanel. We'll instantiate our label, so label equals new JLabel. And then lastly, our slider. So slider equals new JSlider, parentheses, semicolon. Okay, now with the slider, there's a few values that we can add. So with sliders, we can have a spectrum of ranges, and then we can have the user adjust a knob, and then they can enter in a value that way. So the first set of values is the minimum and the maximum set of numbers for our slider. So let's say that we want somebody to adjust a knob on a track between the numbers 0 and 100. So what we'll do for the first number, the minimum, is enter in 0, and then separate it with a comma. Then you can enter in the maximum number. So let's say 100. So maybe we're finding the temperature of maybe water between the temperature of 0 and 100 degrees Celsius. So we're going to set a minimum of 0 and a max of 100. And now there's a third value we can add. This is the starting point for the slider. Let's say we want this to start in the middle. Well, we could say 50 for the starting point. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's add everything to the frame. So first we'll add the slider to the panel, and later we're going to add the panel to the frame. So we'll start with panel.add slider. And we're also going to add the label to the panel. So panel
dot add label, and then frame dot add panel. And then let's set the size for our frame. So frame dot set size, and I like to pick 420 by 420. And then we need to set the frame to be visible. So frame dot set visible true. All right, so first let's work on our slider then. So let's set the preferred size for this slider. So we type in the name of the slider, dot, and then we're going to use the set preferred size method. And we're going to type in new dimension, and we're going to give a width and a height. So 400 is a decent height, width. So 400 for the width and 200 for the height's pretty decent, I would say. Let's actually see what we have so far. Okay, yeah, here's our slider then. So it's just a bar that's adjustable. There's no markings or anything, so we need to add that later. All right, now what we're going to do is add paint ticks. So slider dot set paint ticks, and within parentheses, we're going to place the word true. So let's see what this looks like now. All right, so we also need to add the tick spacing. So these are little, I want to say notches that kind of give you an idea of the range of numbers. So what we'll type in here is slider dot set minor tick spacing. So how often do you want a notch in this slider? Let's say every 10 units, every 10 of whatever you're counting by. In our case, it's degrees Celsius. So let's try it now. So these aren't numbered yet, but you can see about every 10, we should have at least like 10 ranges. Starting at 0, then they go all the way up to 100, and there's a little like notch here. Now we're going to set some major tick spacing, so that comes next. So I'm just going to copy this, and we're going to change a few things. So set paint track, and we want this to be true. And the next thing is set major tick space, and let's set this to 25. Okay, now after each 25 units, there's a larger tick. These are major ticks, and the small ones are minor ticks then. And now with the slider, we can actually add values to each of these major ticks. And let me show you how to do that. So I'll add that maybe right here. So what we're gonna type is slider dot set paint labels, and we're going to set this to true. Now we have our numbers for each of our major ticks, but not the minor ticks. And it gives our whole range between 0 and 100. And you can see that when we started this program, it begun like right in the middle at 50 because we set this value, this argument, the third one, to 50. The first one is the minimum, which is 0, and the second value is the maximum, which is 100. So if you adjusted these numbers, it would also adjust the numbers on our slider. Let's also change the font on here too. So maybe I'll do that next. So slider dot set font new font. I really cannot spell today. And maybe I'll give this a font of MV Bully because that's one of my favorite fonts. And then font dot plain. We don't need to do any styling. And I will pick a font size of 15. And let's see what this looks like now. Not too bad, not too bad. Looks more modern, I would say. So one trick you can do with this slider bar is that by default, this is horizontal. So we could actually change this to a vertical slider bar, and that kind of resembles a thermometer since we're taking the temperature. So in order to change that to vertical then, type the name of the slider, dot, set, orientation. And then within here, we're going to type swing constants, and then dot vertical. And let's take a look. Yeah, I would say that would fit a thermometer of sorts. Then if you want to change it back, it's going to be the same process, but change vertical to horizontal. And this is what we had previously, but I think for this demonstration, I'm going to keep it as vertical, but I'll just turn this into a comment just so you have it for your notes. All right, let's add a label. So we'll have a label underneath that will display the current temperature, whatever this is set to. So let's add that right underneath our slider, but before we add everything to our panel and our frame. Now to set the text for the label, type in the name of the label, and we're going to use the set text function, and then we're going to change the text. So I'm going to insert the degree symbol. I actually don't know how to do this normally, so I copied it from Google. Then degrees C equals, and then if we want to retrieve what the current value of the slider is set to, we can add plus slider, and we'll use the get value function of the slider. All right, let's take a look at this now. So it says it's set to 50 degrees Celsius, but I think I'm going to increase the font. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it, and change slider to label. And let's set this to maybe 25, so it's more visible. That's better. Okay, so it's currently set to 50, but if we adjust this, this number doesn't change. So I'll teach you guys how to do that. And we're going to do this within our state changed method. So what we're going to type in here is label.set text. Actually, we can just copy this and paste it. That'd probably be easier. So whenever the state changes for the slider, it's going to execute this line of code and update it. Now, the last thing that we need to do is that we need something to trigger our state changed method. So we need to add a change listener to our slider, and we can just add that here. So type in slider.add change listener, and then within parentheses, type in the word this. So this should work now. Let's try it. Okay, so the midpoint is 50 degrees Celsius. The minimum is 0, which we have here, and the max is 100. And now if we adjusted this slider, this value is also changing whenever we adjust the knob on this track. So it has a minimum of 0 and a max of 100 like we intended, and it's adjusting whenever we actually move the knob on this track then. So that's how JSliders work. It's a GUI component that lets the user enter a value by using an adjustable sliding knob on a track. So if you're looking for extra practice, your assignment is to post the code for a slider that you've made in the comments down below. But yeah, that's one of a few ways you can create a JSlider in Java. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how JProgress bars work in Java. So let's get into it. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Hey everybody, we're going to be building a progress bar, and this is defined as a visual aid to let the user know that an operation is processing. So it's usually good practice to let the user know what's going on behind the scenes, if something's processing, you're waiting on something. Otherwise, if there's no sort of visual cue, the user might close out of your application because they think it's frozen. So let's create a progress bar. We're going to create a new class within our project folder. So file, new class. I'll call this progress bar demo, but call it whatever you want. Click finish. Then we're going to create an instance of this within our main class. So we'll type the name of the class, and I'll call this instance just demo equals new progress bar demo. All right, so we're done with this class. Let's go back to our progress bar demo class, and we're going to import a few things. Import java.awt.asterisk and import javax.swing.asterisk. Then let's create the constructor for this class. So we're going to type in the name of the class, followed by a set of parentheses and curly braces. And before the constructor, we're going to declare a few things. So we'll create a JFrame, and we'll call this frame equals new JFrame. And we're going to create a component called a JProgress bar. So JProgress bar, and we'll call this bar for short, equals new JProgress bar. Okay, now within the constructor, let's create the frame so we can add the bar to the frame. So frame dot set default close operation jframe dot exit on close, and then frame dot set size. Pick whatever size you want, and then I usually set no layout manager, so set layout to null. Only in certain situations I like layout managers. And then we need to take our frame and set the visibility to true. Okay, now we are going to create the JProgress bar. So we're going to set the initial value first. So we're going to type bar.set value. And if you want to start at 0, type in 0 here. Don't know why you'd want to start at a different number, but hey, maybe you can set this to 100 and count down for something. All right, then we're going to set the bounds because we're using no layout manager. So bar.set bounds, and let's start in the top left corner. So we'll set X to 0, Y to 0, and then we'll need to choose a length for this. So maybe I'll type in 420 to match the size of my frame, and then maybe 50 pixels for the height. And then we need to add this bar to our frame. So we'll type in frame.add bar. And let's see what we got so far going on. Okay, we got a nice little bar here, so that's a good start. So with this progress bar, there is actually a special method. So type in bar, and this method is called set string painted, and then pass in true within here. And what this does is that it adds a percentage to your progress bar, and when you fill the progress bar or set the value, this percentage is going to change. So that's kind of cool. All right, so let's fill this progress bar. So all we really need to do is just take this bar and set the value to something else. That's like the bare minimum, I would say. But I think what we'll do is actually put this within a while loop, and we'll have the value of our progress bar increase by a certain amount every second or so. There's so many different ways that you can create a progress bar. This is just like a basic demonstration. So let's do that within a fill method. So at the end of our constructor, we'll call a fill method, and we're going to declare this. So outside of the constructor, we'll make a public void method called fill. And what we'll do is just set the value whenever we call this. All right, so let's just set this to 10 to begin with. So when we run this, it's immediately set to 10. Now what I think we'll do is actually put this within a while loop, and we'll start at 0. So we'll create a counter. So int counter, set this equal to 0, create a while loop, and within the while loop, what we'll do is that we'll continue this while loop as long as our counter is less than or equal to 100. And we're going to take our bar and set the value to whatever our counter is. So if we want to simulate the progress bar increasing over time, we can use the thread.sleep method here, and we can set this to maybe 1000 milliseconds. So this is going to pause our program for 1 second after each iteration of the while loop. And we're going to need to surround this with a try and catch block. And then let's increase our counter, maybe by 10%. So we can say counter plus equals 10. This is the shorthand for saying counter equals counter plus 10. So let's see what happens now. All right, so it starts at 0 and it's going up by 10% every second. Almost there. All right. I think I'm gonna speed this up a little bit, so maybe I'll change the counter to increment by 1% each time and change the thread.sleep method to perhaps 50 milliseconds. So it's going to appear to go actually faster this time, and it's increasing by 1% after each iteration of the while loop. All right, we can also add some text on our bar. So maybe we'll set this after the while loop is complete. We'll display a message such as done. So we type in the name of the progress bar, set string, and then you can add some text. So maybe we'll type in done. And that should be good. So let's try it again. And then when it's finished, it says done, but it's a little difficult to see. So let's change the font of the progress bar. So if we want to change the font, we can type in bar.set font. Then within parentheses, we're going to pass in new font, parentheses again. We can pick a font style. I like MV Bully, it's one of my favorite fonts. Then let's set this to bold. So font.bold. And for a size, maybe 25. But bold has to be all capital. I forget about that sometimes. Okay, let's take a look at this now. All right, that's much better. You can actually see it this time. And when it says done, that's actually visible this time, and it's not so small. Let's also change the foreground color. So bar.set foreground. Then within here, we just send in a color. So maybe color dot maybe red. And let's take a look. And the fill color is now red. Actually, this would be kind of cool for some sort of HP bar for a video game, but you'd probably want to start at maybe 100 and then just progress this downwards. And let's also change the background color. So bar.set background, maybe black, color.black. So the background is black and the fill color is red. So another thing, with this JProgress bar, within the constructor, you can pass in a minimum and a maximum value for this progress bar. So maybe we'll set the minimum to 0, and then the max, maybe 500. Actually, you know what? Let's create like some sort of HP bar in a video game. So I think what we'll do is actually count downwards. So we'll change our while loop. We'll continue this as long as counter is greater than or equal to 1 or 0, I guess. Actually, greater than 0 would be better. And then we'll decrease our counter by maybe 1. So that's minus equals 1. All right, so let's try this. Oh, we should probably set our counter to whatever this was, 500. Okay, that kind of appears to be somebody's HP draining like in a video game. That's pretty cool too. But we'll switch back to the example we had previously, so I'm just going to undo all of this. But yeah, you can pass in a minimum and a maximum value to your progress bar. Alright everybody, well that's the basics of JProgress bars, and with this set value method of the JProgress bar, there's so many different things you can do with this. You won't necessarily have your thread asleep for so many milliseconds before updating this. You might link this to some sort of like task. After the task is complete, you can increment this counter by something. There's really no right way or wrong way to do this. This is just like one of a few different ways to demonstrate this concept. So if you want a copy of all this code, I'll post this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of how JProgress bars work in Java.
Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your bro here, hope you're doing well, and in this video I'm going to teach you guys how we can create a menu bar in Java, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Alright people, let's dive into this. So I have two classes, a main class and then a myFrame class. MyFrame extends JFrame, so it behaves exactly like a JFrame. It also implements the action listener interface. And within my main class, I just have a new instance of MyFrame. And within the constructor of MyFrame, I have 4 lines of code. This.set default close operation, JFrame exit on close. This.set size, set this to whatever size you want. I just picked 500 by 500. This.set layout, I'm using a new flow layout. And this.set visible set to true. And then also make sure you have an action performed method. So let's begin. To create a menu bar, we first need to create the menu bar, then we add separate menus or tabs, kind of like what we have at the top here with our IDEs. There's different tabs that you can navigate to, and there are also menu items that you add to each of these tabs, to each of these menus. So let's begin by creating the menu bar to actually be as the container to contain all of these menus and menu items. So let's create a J menu bar, and we will call this menu bar equals new J menu bar. And then instead of adding this to the frame, we set it. So type in the name of the frame you're using. For me, it's just this. So this dot set menu bar. And we place the name of the menu bar within this method. That's set J menu bar, by the way. All right, so let's try this. All right, so nothing is currently visible. That's because we have to add menus to this menu bar, kind of like what we have at the top of our IDEs. So let's create menus for File, Edit, and Help. So these are J menus. J menu, let's call the first menu File Menu equals new J menu. And then you can either set some text or pass this to the constructor. I will just say File. And let's do the same thing for Edit and Help. So we have an Edit menu that says Edit, and a Help menu that says Help. Now with these menus, we add them to the menu bar, we don't set them. So we type in the name of our menu bar, menu bar dot add. Then we're going to add these individual menus. So we're going to add the File menu first, followed by the Edit menu, then Help menu. So Edit menu, and then Help menu. And now these should be visible. So you can see here, here's our menu bar, and here are the individual tabs or menus. However, if we were to click on these, there's no menu items. So let's add a few items to our File menu. So these are menu items. So let's declare these. Let's say we want a menu for, well, menu item for save, load, and exit. So these are J menu items. And we'll call the first one load item equals new J menu item. And we will set some text either by using the set text method or just pass this into the constructor. So this will be load. Then we'll want a few others for save and exit. So this will be save item, and the text will be save, and exit item, and the text will be exit. So then with these items, we add them to the menu that we want. Let's say we want to add these to the File menu, so we type in the name of our File menu, kind of like what we did with our menu bar. So File menu dot add load item. So this is a menu item, and we'll repeat the process for save item and exit item. So save item and exit item. And I'm just going to group these together so it's easier to read. All right, so this is what we got so far. We have our menu bar, we have our menus, they kind of function like tabs. We don't have anything added to help or edit. I don't really think we'll need to, but with File, there's actually a drop-down menu. We can select one of these items to perform some sort of task for us. So let's use our Action Listener interface to actually have these perform some sort of task for us. So we need to add an Action Listener to each of these menu items. So let's add them here. So load item dot add action listener. Since we're implementing an Action Listener interface, we can just pass in this, and we'll repeat this process for the save item and the exit item. So save item and exit item. So now these will respond to clicks if you were to click on them. However, we need to state what we want them to do within the action performed method. So let's just do this with some if statements. So if e.get source is equal to our load item, we will pretend that we're loading a file. So system.out.println I think I mistyped this. There. We'll display a message. Beep, boop, you loaded a file. All right, but within our action performed method, it does not recognize this load item component. So we need to declare these outside of our constructor because right now they are only local. So anything within the constructor, within these sets of curly braces, actually recognize what this is. So let's declare all of these items, all of these components outside of our constructor. So that's J menu bar, and we do not need to declare this twice. I could have done this for the beginning, but I think it's easier to understand if I just declare everything all together, and then we fix this later. So give me one moment to fix these. So that's our edit menu, our help menu, and then we will probably want to declare the items as well outside of the constructor. So we have load item, save item, and exit item. Actually, I think I'm just going to copy all of these and get rid of most of these lines here. There we go. All right, so our action performed method now recognizes this load item component. And let's just create a few other if statements. There's more elegant ways of writing this, but this is something really simple for us beginners. So let's say if e.getSource equals save item, we will display beep boop you saved a file. And then lastly, we have exit item. So it's the same process as before. So exit item. Actually, why don't we have our program actually exit? So in order to do that, it is system.exit, and then you can just pass in 0. All right, so this will now respond to events. So here's our menu bar, each of the menus, and here are the menu items. So if we click load, it's going to pretend that we're loading a file. File, save, you have saved the file, and then exit. Exit will actually work because system.exit will close out of your program. One feature available to us is that we can set keyboard shortcuts for all of the menu items and the menus. So in order to do that, we use the set mnemonic method. So let's add that perhaps here. So let's begin with the different menu items. So we type in the name of the menu item we want to add a mnemonic to. So that is, let's say, load first. So load item dot set mnemonic. It's spelled kind of funky. So set mnemonic, and then we add a key event. So key event dot, and then the key that we want to set for this shortcut. So let's say we want L for load. So that would be VK underscore capital L. So I'll add a comment here. So this is L for load. And let's set a few others for save and exit. So save item, set mnemonic, key event, then S, make sure that's capital S for load. So S for load, and then exit. So that is exit item, key event, how about E? E for exit. Let me fix that. All right, let's try this. So we still need to navigate to the specific menu where these are contained. But if you look at each of these menu items here, they are underlined with their keyboard shortcut. So if I were to type L, it's going to load a file, S to save, and then E to exit. And you can do the same thing for the individual menus as well. So let's set a mnemonic for those. I'm just going to group these together. So we have file menu, edit menu, and then help menu. So let's say FEH to match the file or the different menu names. So that's F, E, and then H. However, for these menus, you need to hold Alt plus whatever key. So that's Alt F for file, and then Alt E for edit, and Alt H for help. Probably change these as well. So Alt F for file, Alt E for edit, and Alt H for help. And let's give this a go. Now, I'm not going to use the mouse cursor at all. I'm going to use my mnemonics that I set up. So if I want the help menu, that is Alt-H. Edit is Alt-E. File is Alt-F. And then to select one of the menu items, I don't need to hold Alt. I just select the letter. So you can actually see that they're underlined too. So load is just L. I need to go back to the file if I want to select something else. So that is Alt-F. Then S for save. Alt-F again to go back to file, and then E for exit. All right, so let's also set some icons for each of these menu items. So I have a few icons that I want to use for load. I just have a folder. Save is a floppy disk, and exit is a door because I think that's appropriate. So I'm going to create some image icons, but I'm going to declare these outside of our constructor. So image icon, I will call the first one load icon. And then I want a save icon and exit icon. So this is save icon. And then exit icon. And I'm going to instantiate these within the constructor. So load icon equals new image icon, then the file path or the file name. Since these are within the same project folder, I just have to use the file name. I don't need the full file path. So for load icon, I'm going to use load.png and repeat the process for save and exit. So save icon, save.png, exit icon, and that is exit.png. And then we need to set these icons to the menu items. So let's add them perhaps here. So load item dot set icon. Then we pass in an icon. I'm going to pass in my load icon that I created. And we'll need to repeat the process for the other items. So next we have save item. And this icon is that floppy disk. Save icon. And then exit item dot set icon, exit icon. So now we should have some icons for these menu items. So here we go. We have the three icons that I wanted to use. We can load, we can save, and then we can exit. All right, so in the next video, I'm going to show you guys how we can use the JFileChooser class, where we can actually select a file, and you can use this as like a backbone if you want. So that's the basics of, what did we cover again? Menu bars, menus, and menu items. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of creating a menu bar in Java. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how we can use the JFileChooser class in Java to select a file someplace within your computer. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Alright people, let's just get right into this. So we're going to be discussing the JFileChooser class. This is a GUI mechanism that lets a user choose a file. We're only going to be selecting a file today. I have other videos on loading files and saving files. So this is helpful for opening or saving files if you want to look for a file that's someplace within your computer or within your project folder. So let me show you my setup real quick. I have two classes, a main class and then a myFrame class. I have a new instance of myFrame within my main class. myFrame extends JFrame, implements the action listener interface. I have a constructor called myFrame. This .setDefaultClose close operation, JFrame exit on close. I'm using a new flow layout, this .pack, and this .set visible to true. Now to launch the JFileChooser, we're probably going to need a button. So let's create a button to do so. So let's say button equals new button, and I'll add some text, maybe select, or better yet, select file. All right. And then I want to add an action listener to this button. So button.add action listener. Since this class is implementing the action listener interface, I can just pass in this, and then we need to add this button to the frame. So this.add, and we're adding the button. All right. So we need to check if we are clicking this button, then we're going to launch an event. So if e.getSource is equal to our button. However, this action performed method does not recognize this button, so we need to declare this outside of our constructor. So jButton, and then we do not need to declare this twice. All right, so when we click on our button, and let's just try this real quick. So we have our button and it says select file in the top corner. So we are going to launch a new instance of our jFileChooser class. So in order to do that, we need to first declare it jFileChooser, and we will call this file chooser equals new jFileChooser. All right, so now if we were to run this and we click on select file, it currently doesn't do anything. Well, that's because we didn't set it up to do anything yet. We only declared and created a new instance of file chooser. So the next step is that we are going to either show open dialog or show save dialog. We're not actually going to be opening or saving any files, just getting the location for the file. So let's go with show open dialog, and then I'll show you show save dialog right after. So in order to do that, to open our dialog menu, it is the name of our file chooser right here, dot show either open dialog or save dialog. Let's just go with open. All right. And then if you have a parent component, you place that in here, but we don't have one. So we're just going to put null for now. So what this does is that I'm going to add a comment. This will select file to open. All right. So I currently have a file on my desktop, and this is what this currently looks like. It's going to bring you to your default directory of where you usually open files. And I have a file on my desktop, and it is called Hello World. All right, so you can select a file to open, and there's different files of type where you can search through these, but I'll show you that later. So let's say we want to open this file. Well, where is it? All right, so there's a few other steps. So with FileChooser.showOpenDialog, it's going to return an integer value. Think of it as the response. And I'll actually print this with a println statement. So system.out.println, and I'm going to place this within the println statement. And I just want to show you what this returns exactly. All right, so I'm going to go to my desktop. And then I'm going to attempt to open this file again. So open. Okay, so this returns 0. So that's kind of like the response based on what button we click. If I were to click cancel, it's going to return 1. Or if I click X, it's going to return 1 as well. So we can actually do something with this. Perhaps we can store this within a variable. So I'm going to create an integer variable called response. Int response equals FileChooser.showOpenDialog. And then we can check to see if response is equal to 0. But there's another way of writing this. If response is equal to 0, that's one way. Or what we could do is write jFileChooser.approve option, and that would be better. So if somebody successfully selects a file and does not click cancel or click X button, then we can actually create a new file. We can store that. So let's declare a new file. File equals new file. And the file path for this is going to be file chooser dot get selected file dot get absolute path. All right. And then we'll probably need an import for this file as well. Okay, then let's print the file path for this file. So we can do that with system.out.println, and we're going to place the file name here. So then what happens is that when we select a file, let's say I want to go back to my desktop and select that Hello World file, this is going to get the file path, and currently it's on my desktop. So we don't necessarily need this println statement, but it's just proving that this file actually has a location too. So then I have other videos on loading a file or saving a file using scanners or print writers, but we'll save that for another video. Actually, I think I'm going to keep this println statement just because we have more to do. Okay, now we have show save dialog. Currently with show open dialog, we can select a file to open, and we have an open button. Alternatively, we have show save dialog. So that is file chooser.show save dialog. So I'm going to change open to save. And I'll just turn this first line into a comment because we don't really need it anymore. So this will select file to save. All right, it's the same process as before really, but now we have this save button and we can attempt to save a file, but there's still more steps we have to follow for actually creating a file. I have a separate video on that. So if I wanted to save something to my desktop, this could be test file.txt. Then I'm going to click save. Currently, this won't actually create a file, but here it's just printing the file location and it's set to my desktop. All right, so that is show save dialog. Now, one other thing that we could do too is that we can set the current directory, because right now it's just going to the default for my computer, and that is my documents folder, and we can actually change that. So in order to do that, it is file chooser dot set current directory, and we pass in a new file, and we specify the file path within this new file. So one trick, if you want to place this within set the current directory to your project folder, that would be just a dot within quotes. So this is going to go to my project folder, and the project name is GUI Swing. So you can see that that changed. Otherwise, I could place a file path here. So if I wanted the current directory by default to be set to my desktop, I would place the file path for my desktop. And for my desktop, this is the address. Now, if I were to run this and select a file, the default directory is now my desktop, and I can attempt to open or save a file here. Well, that's the basics of the JFileChooser class, and in a future video, we're actually going to be creating a text editor app, and we'll need to use the JFileChooser class. So if you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of the JFileChooser class in Java. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your bro here, hope you're doing well, and in this video I'm going to teach you guys how we can use the JColorChooser class in Java to color components, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Okay, let's get started everybody. So we're going to be discussing the JColorChooser class. This is a GUI mechanism that lets a user choose a color. So here's an example of my setup. I have two classes, a class called main that contains my main method, and a new instance of my other class called myFrame. So myFrame extends JFrame and implements the action listener interface. I have a constructor called myFrame. Within the constructor, I have this.setDefaultClose operation, JFrame exit on close. I'm using a new flow layout, followed by this.pack and this.setVisibleToTrue. I also have an action performed method for when we click on a button, we're going to change either the background color or the font color of a label. So let's declare a button and a label. So let's declare these outside of the constructor so that they're globally available to our action performed method. So we'll create a JButton, let's call this button, as well as a label. So JLabel called label. And then we will finish instantiating these within the constructor. So button equals new JButton, and I'm going to set some text right away just by passing in a string to the constructor of the JButton. I will say pick a color. All right, let's create a label. So that is label equals new JLabel, but this has to be capital. Okay, I'm also going to set the background color. So label.set background, and then we can pick a color, maybe just white. So color.white. So in order to display the background color, we need to set opaque true. So set opaque, and we're going to pass in true. Let's also set some text and the font. So label.set text. This is some text. Good enough. Let's also change the font too, because this is going to be fairly small. So label.set font, and we can pass in a new font. Pick whatever font you want. I will pick one of my favorites, which is MV Boley. You can style this. I'm just going to set this to plain, and then a size. I want something massive like 100. And that's all there is to it. Oh, then we have to add an action listener to this button. So button dot add action listener. And I'm going to pass in this because we're implementing the action listener interface. And then we need to add this button and this label to the frame. So this dot add, we're going to add the button followed by the label. So this dot add label. Then we should be good. All right, so all we have is a button and then some text. This is our label. So when we click on our button, we're going to launch a new instance of our JColorChooser. So if e.getSource is equal to our button, then we're going to declare and instantiate a new color chooser. So in order to do that, we're going to declare JColorChooser, and we will call this instance colorChooser, or whatever you want, equals new JColorChooser. So this will create a new instance of our JColorChooser, but we need to create a dialog box. So we can actually assign that to a new color, whatever this returns. So color, we'll call this color, equals JColorChooser dot show dialog. So for the arguments, this takes a parent component, a title, and an initial color. So for the parent component, we're just going to set this to null because we don't have one. We can set a title, so pick a color, I guess. And then an initial color, like what do you want the default to be? So I'll just say color.black. So this will create a dialog for us, and when we run this and click on our button to pick a color, it's going to open this menu, and it has our title, pick a color, I guess. Okay, so we can pick a color, and we can click OK. This has a few other options too. I don't really know what this crap is, but feel free to mess with these settings. So let's say I want this green color, then I click OK. Well, we have this color stored within our color, called color coincidentally. Now, we need to actually change the color of whatever it is we want to color. So let's change the foreground color of our label first. So label.set foreground, that's the font color, and we're going to pass in our color that we select. So now when we run this and we pick a color, let's say I want that green color again, I think it was something like that, and click OK, it's now going to change the foreground color. We can also change the background color too of whatever component that we want. So I'm going to change the background of our label. So label.set background, and we're going to pick that color again. So let's pick, I don't know, pink. And the background is now pink. So you don't necessarily have to do this with labels. You can do this with all sorts of components, but a label is kind of convenient just because you can add text to a label, and you can also change the background color. Well, that's the very basics of the JColorChooser class. If you want a copy of all this code, I'll post all of this in the comments down below. But yeah, that's the basics of the JColorChooser class in Java. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's your bro here. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to teach you guys how the key listener interface works in Java. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support will help keep this channel running. Okay, everybody, let's get started. Now, within my project folder, I have two classes, one class called main, and it contains an instance of my other class called myFrame. myFrame extends JFrame, so it behaves exactly like a JFrame. And within the constructor for myFrame, for this class, I have 4 lines of code. This.setDefaultClose operation, JFrame exit on close. I'm using a size of 500 by 500. This next part's important. I'm using no layout manager. This.setLayout is set to null because we're going to be manually moving components within the frame by using some keystrokes. And lastly, this.setVisible is set to true. One of a few ways in which you can use a key listener interface is just to add that after the class definition. myFrame extends JFrame, implements the key listener interface. And with interfaces, you need to add any unimplemented methods. And for key listeners, there's currently 3: key typed, key pressed, and key released. And in just a moment, I'll explain the difference between the 3. but we need to add a key listener to this frame. So we can type in the name of the frame, which is just this, add key listener. And since we're implementing a key listener interface, we can simply just pass in this. So this frame will now respond to key events. And we have key typed, key pressed, and key released. And let me explain the difference between these three. I've added just a few short descriptions underneath each of these methods. Let's begin with key typed. Key typed is invoked when a key is typed. This uses a key char or key character. It gives us a character output depending on the key that is pressed. Key pressed is invoked when a physical key is pressed down. This uses a key code. It gives us an integer number depending on the number of the button that is pressed down. Each button on your keyboard has an associated number, and key code gives us the number of the button. And key released is fairly simple. It's called whenever a button is released. So let's actually display what the difference between a key char and a key code is. So within our key released method, this is going to be called whenever we release a button. So let's actually display some key characters as well as some key codes. So let's begin with some key characters. So let's add a print line that says, you released key character, and we can get the key character of this event by typing e.getKeyChar. And let's try this. So I'm going to press Q, and it says your released key character Q, WERTY 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you can actually use capital letters, so I'm going to hold down Shift and type in QWERTY. So those are key characters. Now key code is the number of the button. You released key code, and this is e.getKeyCode. So each of these buttons has a number. Actually, let me turn this line into a comment for now. So I'm going to type in Q, and the number of the button, of the Q button, is 81. W is 87, E is 69, R is 82, T is 84, and Y is 89. So lowercase q is 81, but uppercase Q is also 81 because I'm holding down the same button. And 16 is Shift, and I just released it, so that's why this was triggered. So let's actually display these together now. So Q, the button that contains the Q symbol, produces a character, a key character of Q, and the button number, the key code, is 81. Now if I were to hold down Shift and then press the same button, this is producing a different key character, capital Q, but the key code is still the same because it's still the same button. So that's the difference between a key character and a key code. And then I'm still holding down Shift. If I were to release it, it's going to give us the key character and the key code. Well, Shift doesn't produce any key characters, that's why it's confused, but it has a certain key code of 16. And what we're going to be doing in this video is creating a simple label, and we'll move the label around the frame by using either key typed or key pressed. So let's declare a label and then define it. So JLabel, and let's call this label. And within the constructor, let's instantiate this label. Label equals new J label. And let's set the bounds for this label. Label.set bounds. We're setting the bounds since we're using no layout manager. Let's say we want this to start in the top left corner of the frame. That is where X is 0, Y is 0. Let's make the width 100 and the height 100. And let's set a background color. Label.set background. Why not red, I guess? And in order to display the background color, we need to label.set opaque and set this to true, because the background color doesn't like to display if you don't set the opacity, set opaque to true. All right, and then we need to add this label to the frame. This.add. We're adding our label. And we should have a simple label in the top left corner. Now this is our label. We're going to move this label around the frame depending on the key that we press or the key that we type. Let's begin by filling in the key typed method. We can evaluate the key character that is being produced. And this would be best by using a switch. You could write this with a bunch of if statements, but it's not as efficient. So let's use a switch. And what we're going to be passing into the switch to examine is e.getKeyCharacter. This will produce a character, and then we can use the switch to determine what character is being used. So let's set different cases. Let's have a case for A to move to the left, W to move up, S to move down, and D to move right. So if the key character that is being produced is A, if somebody types in the character A, we want to move our label to the left. And one way in which we can do that is by using the name of our label, label.setLocation, and we pass in some coordinates, some new coordinates of where we want to place this label. On the y-axis, we want to keep this the same, so we can use label.getY. And we're going to do the same thing for x, but we're going to adjust it slightly. Label.getX. But if we want to move to the left, we want to subtract a number from this. Let's say just 1 pixel, we'll keep this small. And let's try this. So we have our label. If I were to press A, this is slowly moving to the left. But we need to set this for the other directions as well. So I'm going to add a break after this case, and I'm just going to indent this slightly, just so it's easier to read. So let's have a case for W, S, and D. So case W, we want X to stay the same, but we want to move up. So we subtract a number from Y. And then we need S and D. S will move down, so this is +1. And then X stays the same. And lastly, D. X will just add 1, and Y we will keep the same. And now we should be able to move up, down, left, and right. Down, right, up, left. So this is moving fairly slow. We can actually increase the amount of pixels this is moving after each key character. So let's change this from 1 to 10. And this is going to be more drastic. All right, this is moving much faster now. But yeah, you get the idea. Now let's do the same thing, but use the arrow keys on the keyboard. The arrow keys do not produce a key character, but you can use key pressed for these. So let's actually copy this switch that we have and paste it within here. And this time we're going to be using the key code. So let's pass in the key code underneath key pressed. And the case will be, actually we need to see what these buttons are first. Okay, so left is 37, up is 38, down is 40, and right is 39. So we're going to pass in or use these numbers for the cases. So let's begin with left. That is 37. 37, we're going to be moving to the left minus 10 pixels. Case 38, we're going to be moving up by 10 pixels by 10. 39 is down. Actually, that's right. So we're going to move to the right by 10. And then 40 should be down. And this is, X is going to be the same, and Y is +10. All right, I'm not going to use WASD. I'm using the arrow keys on my keyboard. So down, right, up, and then left. Now, I have a special treat to show you guys before you go. Instead of moving our boring red label on the screen, let's move an image. I have an image of a rocket that I want to use in place of this red square. So I'm going to add this icon to the label, but first we need to create an icon. So if you want, feel free to pause the video and download an image that you want to use. So I'm going to create an image icon. We'll call this icon. First, let's declare it, and then within the